Rings of Power reviews have been wild, with them ranging from the good, to the bad, to the non-existent. Yeah, they blocked them on the UK as well, with many of the positive reviews having all of the creative originality of Harry Styles.
You know, my favorite thing about the movie is, like, it feels like a movie. Go to the theater, film, movie.
Seriously, I think he had quite a big impact on Rings of Power. Not only does it seem like he wrote some of the lines...
Do you know why a ship floats and a stone cannot? Because the stone sees only downward. But the ship, her gaze is not downward but up.
But I think he consulted on wardrobe as well, especially Celebrimbor's maternity wear. It's definitely in this season. But my favourite thing about his interview here is that it has exactly the same energy as one of Rings of Power's.
Gender roles feels very like traditional, misogynistic time. Incredibly relevant explanation of like the history of kind of toxic masculinity and male rage.
It means absolutely everything. It is everything. It is everything for people of colour. It is everything to progress forward, to be part of a redress of balance within this world is an honour.
The best films are the ones that make you feel a little bit uncomfortable.
A lot like this interview did. I didn't really know much about him before this interview, and now I realise I don't want to. But Amazon did us a favour, you see. They were so confident that you were going to give them a 10-star review on their 5-star rating system that they thought we might as well just skip to the end point and not let them leave a review because we already know what the result is going to be. And despite the fact that this was supposed to be a 72-hour delay on leaving reviews, we're now about 36 hours past that delay, and yeah, you still can't leave them. I, for one, admire the sheer confidence in this approach, especially when you consider that this was only done to combat fake reviews, and definitely wasn't in any way designed to stop people legitimately reviewing a terrible show as actually being terrible. But my favourite thing about this entire framing is the idea that negative reviews are actually just fake, and that any backlash to anything at all in the series is obviously illegitimate in some way. To which I can only pose the question, how, if someone has watched your show and then come up with an opinion about it, can it actually be fake or illegitimate in any way? And even if they haven't seen it and are only reacting to the marketing of your show, isn't that simply a reflection that your marketing has been awful and still would indeed be a legitimate review of whatever you've produced? Because they go on to talk about the fact that Rotten Tomatoes has a 38% average audience score, despite the fact that it has an 85% critic score, because critics are largely concerned with the perception of a show and less the actual quality of entertainment value which something provides. Does this give me access? Does this improve my career? And does this improve whatever social ideas which I happen to be supporting this week are largely their priority compared to the actual audience? But what gets me is how they dare talk about IMDb after admitting that the TV site is owned by Amazon. I mean, if there's a conflict of interest that will make you immediately disregard any scores at all, it's the fact that the review site is actually owned by Amazon. That then goes on to admit that a lot of the reviews have just been disregarded because the site has a weighted average, which attempts to downrate activity. IMDb there admitting that they completely disregard reviews because we need to artificially inflate the quality of crap entertainment. If you want to make money in business by appealing to the broadest group of people, you should probably just make shows that people want. There isn't some group of people that just negatively review everything, because not every show is negatively reviewed. But let's just embrace the sheer delusional insanity of if that happened to be reality, and see how that would really affect Amazon's review system to begin with. Because to review Rings of Power, you'd need an Amazon account signed up to Amazon Prime, which has your address, your credit card details, and your purchase history on Amazon, the single largest e-commerce website in the West. If anyone would be able to track down if you were a bot or a real person, it would be Amazon. There's no need for them to entirely disable reviews, unless they know it's not from bots. They know the reviews would be coming from real accounts, because they can prove they're real people, because they've got their addresses and their purchase history. No, it seems like the defensive of the smooth-brained don't really work here. But all those positive reviews were just brimming with praise. This wasn't just any old show, oh no. This was a show that redefines what's possible for television, and so obviously, The reviews are going to point out exactly what that is, what drew them in, what got them so hooked on these episodes that they're just so desperate to see the next episode, the next piece of the story. This has got to have hooks all over the place that pulls the viewer into the series and doesn't let them go until right at the very end. Let's have a look at what they liked about it. Well, we've got a release date. It was written by Tolkien. It cost $1 billion, and there were some movies about it. So far, the review is off to a great start. There's an introduction, and Galadriel appears, Harfoots appear, and they jump about all over the place between different characters. That's the review of episode 1. In the second episode, we see some dwarves. They go through a challenge. Music appears in the show, and some people act better than others. And all that means that the Rings of Power as a whole will soon pass beyond praise and into legend. Amazon has not only delivered on its promise, but done so by honoring the legacy of Tolkien in all its linguistic glory.
A dog may bark at the moon, but he cannot bring it down.
And that was the end of the review. We came, people acted. We visited some dwarves, Morfydd Clark appeared, and other people acted while music happened. Oh, congratulations, it sounds like it redefines television. It does largely seem that these positive reviews that actually came out all relied on one single thing. They were released before the show was. 31st of August. All we're here to do is tell you it's amazing. We want to tell you to watch the show, because it's going to be amazing. Just go and watch it.
Watch it. You'll enjoy it.
Reviews from people that don't care about getting access, after the show had actually been seen to the masses, and therefore they could actually be held accountable to their audiences, they weren't quite so fond of it. And if we just pick one of those reviews, just out of the ether somewhere, what we could kind of come back with is the idea of, let's see what Elon said about it. Tolkien is turning in his grave, and almost every male character so far is a coward, a jerk, or both. Now, he does say that only Galadriel is brave, smart, and nice, and I know some people have disagreed with this, but I do get his point. Galadriel, by any sane, normal human being's view of it, definitely isn't nice, but she is meant to be. The showrunners, the writers, and everything about how she's presented is meant to make you think that she's nice. She's the one who's in the right. She's the one who's doing all the perfect stuff. She's the one who defeats everything. She's meant to be good, great, and amazing. But most of all, she's supposed to be aspirational. This is the person which all Type Bs are meant to be in the future. If you can see it, you can be it. That's the idea of the show. That's what so many actors have said in the past. And Galadriel is exactly what they expect so many people to be. I agree that Galadriel is an absolutely horrible character, and yet that is what the showrunners and the writers see as virtuous. This is the same as She-Hulk and everything else. It's a horrible person who's just constantly betrayed as being the exact thing which everyone should be in the future. But there were a lot of people who really were not happy that Elon had spoken out about this. You see, one of the things about trying to create a perceptional reality that, oh no, this is all great, everyone loves it, it's amazing, not a single person disagrees, is one single opinion disagreeing with you destroys your entire vision. That's why it's so important to shut them up, to make sure they disappear. And of course, the bigger the account, the bigger the influence, the bigger effect they will have in destroying your perception of reality, which means that person must be silenced by any means possible. This is how you get Neil Gaiman arguing with Darren Grimes. I'm not sure why this is the issue Darren Grimes decided to grow a spine over, but here we are. With Neil proving himself to not understand how the English language works, while simultaneously just throwing around random slurs at people because he actually doesn't have an argument. And that tends to be the case when you don't understand how a tan works. And then when someone responds with an actual legitimate point, which quite frankly is more than he deserves, all we get is, ah, bless, because you see, he's already hit the end of his NPC script line, and so we just kind of 404 error out. It's at this point that we enter a new timeline, and I actually do think we're living in the single best entertainment timeline ever. Now, I'm someone who enjoys taking the piss out of terrible entertainment, so for me, the worse the entertainment gets, the more funny everything appears. But I understand that's not the generally held opinion. But even in that case, you've got to appreciate the fact that we're living in a timeline where someone may have paid $1 billion just to get Sauron to twerk on screen. How can that even be improved when it comes to entertainment? That would have me pissing myself into next year if we get that. And sure, you think it won't happen now, but no one thought it would happen with She-Hulk until last week, so anything is possible at this point. But Neil Gaiman here, he says, Elon doesn't come to me for advice on how to fail to buy Twitter, So I don't go to him for film, TV, or literature criticism. And one thing I always find it amazing about Twitter is just how many errors you can make in a 280 character limit. I mean, firstly, he didn't fail to buy Twitter. He chose not to. And I know this can be difficult for someone under the sort of Hollywood umbrella to understand. But failure and deciding not to do something isn't the same thing. And also, what does it matter who you go to for film, TV, or literature criticism? Your opinion of something and whether you go to listen to them doesn't impact the only thing that actually matters. Is it true? You can not like something, disregard it, think lowly of something, but you still won't actually influence the one thing in the universe which has any value. Objective reality. Rings of Power sucks. And Elon was simply speaking to that single reality. You don't have to agree with it, you don't have to like it, but it still won't change the fact of what real life actually is. And as to the fact of him choosing not to buy Twitter, I don't know. Maybe the fact that 90% of his comments are bots may have had something to do with the fact that, yeah, you see that stock price, it's, I don't know, just incredibly overvalued. Maybe it's worth asking the question that if all those users aren't real, why are the few users that are there so valuable? You know, users like a certain Washington Post journalist who was telling people to block Elon because why would you care about his opinion about Rings of Power? Yeah, certainly no conflict of interest here. Certainly not one that would cause them to delete the tweet after attention was drawn to it. That would be the same Washington Post which is owned by the same person which is making Rings of Power. But if I ever want a really deep, nuanced and intellectual take on something, the person which I naturally go to is, of course, Whoopi Goldberg. Yeah, I mean, the article doesn't even say if she's actually seen the TV show or knows anything about it, but don't worry, that doesn't stop her from doing the analysis of a toddler on it. She's never been restrained before, she's not about to start now. No, that's how we end up with the aristocratic condescension of telling people that don't like the shows to get a job. How do you think people are feeding themselves so that they're physically alive to actually watch the show in the first place? And I don't know whether you're aware of this. Hobbits and dragons don't exist in real life. And like I say, as much as I do enjoy her appealing to reality, if at some point we could advance past the 5th grade, I would appreciate it. But no, there are no dragons. A statement so complex it had to be repeated. And there are no hobbits. We got a 3rd time just for luck. This is worse than the show is.
Year gave way to year. Century gave way to century.
And she thinks for some reason people are going to go out onto the streets. Look, love, I know you haven't deigned to descend into the realms of the peasantry in quite a long time, but you might want to at least treat them like normal human beings and not assume that people are going to go insane because of a TV show. Instead, she just continues to not understand what any law or canon means, because the idea of any kind of reality which doesn't exist from inside her own face is completely beyond her. And she says, what I think is fascinating is that dragons are okay. Fire-breathing dragons. Yeah, because they're actually contained within the canon of the universe. This is a separate universe, which is written down with rules, everything is defined. This is a separate world, which exists in its own bubble of reality, and has literally nothing to do with you, or your house, or any of your personal opinions. In fact, you're entirely irrelevant to that universe. As strange as that may be to you and your little Californian bubble over there. But people who are born within the canon can fit in the canon, but people who are outside the canon is too far. I mean, to bring it down to a level that you might understand, I'd also have the same issue if you broke other rules, such as saying that 2 + 2 = 5. It's almost like when something is defined and set in stone in its own world, that's the way it is. You can't just come along and destroy it and expect that people won't have a problem with it. Legitimate complaints. And you may condescend and frown among all the dainty little peasantry which actually value this kind of stuff, but I don't actually think anyone cares. Has there ever, at any point in time in anyone's life, throughout all of time and space, that someone has ever suffered a problem and thought, I need to fix this? What would Whoopi Goldberg do? Especially when you've already gone on and talked about Ariel from The Little Mermaid and completely loses her mind when she starts talking about all the different types of mermaids there can be. I'm like, well, okay, but even if there was, we're talking about Ariel. So you're not talking about some arbitrary person that might actually exist within the universe. No, you're talking about a specific person. And if you can't comprehend why that's a problem, how about we do a documentary of your life, Whoopi, and I'll play you. I'm sure you'd have no problems with that. The funniest thing as well of Steve Toussaint bringing up his horrible attacks on the fans, his preemptive assault on potential fans of a show because he lacked any confidence in his own work that people would actually enjoy it, only for him to come out later and start thanking the same people which he'd attacked earlier. Yes, it's almost like their statements don't come from any kind of position of principle at all. There's no foundation or bedrock to their opinions. They will just say literally whatever they think they can say in order to form the narrative they need to try and excuse their show. We're going to attack the fans preemptively before the show arrives, and then if they like it, oh well, we'll just come out and congratulate them. I'm so glad you liked it. Now, the only thing it takes for the fans to change their opinions is the show is actually something they like. But that's not enough for the people involved. Despite the fact of any legitimate complaints people may have of you breaking canon or breaking the law, no, you're going to attack them for that. But when it turns out to be positive for your bank balance, suddenly you'll entirely change your tune and forget everything you've said. Now, my problems with House of the Dragon are entirely different. I never actually had a problem with his casting, because the way I see it, if the show's author wants to entirely change his own work, that's basically his prerogative. But that doesn't change the opinions, the tactics, and the marketing that was put out before House of the Dragon was released, and I, for one, am not going to be quite so fast to change my tune as Steve here. I have no problem with your casting. I do take issue with what you said. It's the fans' prerogative to like or dislike something, and you shouldn't come out and attack them for it. Either way, if they don't like it, you should work on how you can fix something. Not try and cover it up, not attack them for it, not try and hide the truth of their own opinion. The reviews that came out before Rings of Power were incredible, talking about how the show will pass beyond praise and into legend, and how it redefines what's possible for television. Rather ironically, the ones which even stayed within the realms of reality actually came from the ones which covered it before its release. Like Entertainment Weekly had various different exclusives, and they said it's kind of a catastrophe. Even the Washington Post, Amazon's own paper, called it beautiful, banal boredom, which, as well as being great alliteration, is probably an accurate description from my opinion of it. And that is the stark contrast, isn't it? People who don't need access. The Washington Post isn't going to get shut off from anything to do with Amazon, nor is Entertainment Weekly. Yahoo News, though, yeah, they're not quite as important, are they? And everything simply becomes a marketing battle over perception. I have never seen anyone attacked more for having a single opinion about a TV show as Elon was. Everyone jumped on him. People just coming out and saying you should block a guy because he said he didn't like a TV show. It was pretty much insane. And why? Because him saying that annihilated the perceptual reality that was attempted being created by multiple other people. And it's because these are not genuinely held opinions. No one watched Rings of Power and thought that the show would pass beyond praise and into legend, let alone honored Tolkien's legacy of linguistic glory. There is such a thing as laying it on a bit thick, and it's because none of this is founded in principle, something which is static over time, something which would be able to be a good predictor of somebody's opinion. No, instead their opinions will change based off whatever happens to be best for them and their bank balance at that time. That's how you can get a guy simultaneously coming out and massively insulting all of his potential fans, only to thank them when it becomes beneficial for him. I had no problem with his performance in the show. I had no problem with him being cast in the show because of George R.R. Martin's involvement. But if you're going to come out and attack people with the single worst thing that you can imagine saying, then maybe, just maybe, don't come out and thank them afterwards. So at the end of the day, do any of these cumulative review sites actually matter? Well, I mean, when they've proved that they'll hide your reviews, or disregard and delete them, when the sites are owned by the very people making the TV shows themselves, then no, quite frankly, they don't matter to me. Because I think they'll say whatever they need to, no matter how extreme, in order to maintain their own position and their own access, and support the entertainment that pushes what they believe. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe. More videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.